Welcome to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. I'm your host, Johnny Mango. This is the place where we inquire about lifestyle, culture, and careers. Weekly, we meet with new guests that make a contribution of their insightful stories about their careers and how those careers impact their lifestyle and culture. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Minutes with Mango. This is Johnny, and today we have a guest with us that I think can share some very interesting teachings about life and career and balancing all of that together. And I would really like to welcome to the show Joelle Kaufman, who's the author of Crushing the Cancer Curveball and is also an executive in Silicon Valley. So, Joelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Johnny. And just to add on, inspired by the work you and others like you do, I started a podcast in July called Kicking Cancer's Ass.
Okay, great. Well, that's wonderful. Just this July, just a few months ago?
Yeah, just a few months ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm late to the game.
Well, that's all right. We're all late. If you knew about me, you'd know we're all late. Well, Joelle, let's start off by, can you tell us a little bit, you can share your story with us. How did you get here and what prompted you to really talk about your life in public?
Well, that's a great question. So we all make a plan. There's a saying I think it's in Yiddish, but man plans and God laughs. And so we make a plan. I'm going to have this kind of life. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to work. I'm going to meet someone. I'm going to have a family. I'm going to have a career. And, everything is a straight line. Now, you and I both know nothing's a straight line. Everything's got heights and valleys and curves, and nothing's straight. So my first curve was when I was 13. Everything's going as well as it can be when you're in middle school. And my mother had just gone back to work. And it was fantastic. And 2 months after going back to work, my 36-year-old mother, who's strong and athletic and healthy, sits down and she and my dad tell me that she's about to have surgery because they think she has breast cancer.
Mm.
That's kind of shocks your world. And back then in the 80s, she was in the hospital for 6 days. It was a long, protracted recovery. But then it was gone. Cancer was gone. Move on with your life. And then it came back when I was 15. And that led to chemo and radiation, more curves. And life doesn't stop. You still have your school responsibilities. If you're an athlete, which I was, you have those, your clubs, you're applying to college. Life continues in spite of whatever hardship you happen to be facing. And so life continued. And I had heights, I had setbacks. I remember thinking, I want to be in the entertainment business, then working in the entertainment business and saying, no, I don't. I want to be a consultant, then working in it and saying, no, I don't. So all of these ideas I had in my 20s about what I wanted to do and in business school fell into the early internet and said, well, this is pretty interesting. I think I like this. And I did. So professionally, I said, this is good. I'm going to make a career in this new technology. And making that career, I took myself to Brazil. I took myself to the Bay Area. And dragged my husband, the guy I met in business school, he's why I went to Brazil, and I'm why he went to the Bay Area. We wanted children. So we have, we're building careers, both of us. We're trying to build a life. And it's pretty intense. But having children was a priority. So when neither of us had jobs, because we were between jobs, looking for jobs, we had just bought our first house. We thought that was an ideal time to get pregnant. Like crazy, not. And so one of my party tricks, I guess, was I changed jobs 4 times in 3 pregnancies. And
Wow.
Right. And one of them I was 7 months pregnant. So you can approach any curveball, but you do have to approach it, and you have to approach it with curiosity, with confidence, with collaboration, if you have those three things, curiosity, confidence, and collaborators, you can figure out how to handle the curveball. You may not hit a home run, but you also may not get hit by the ball. So somewhere in between those is putting together a life. So when my sister was diagnosed when she was 29, my mother had another bout with cancer in my 40s, but I'm managing to miss the cancer train. So I've been a caregiver a lot, and it wasn't until I was 52, the day before my prophylactic bilateral mastectomy was scheduled, that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So you look at a life, Johnny, and you say, okay, for 42 years, cancer keeps showing up. And because I'd had those experiences, I had more confidence, I was more curious, and I certainly had more collaborators when that curveball was thrown towards me. And it changed how I approached my care and my process to dealing with cancer. Every medical professional I met, and the vast majority of people in my community, kept giving me feedback that it was really different. And at the end of 12 cycles of chemotherapy, my labs were so good, my oncologist said, I would never think you were a cancer patient. So having lived through it a dozen times as a caregiver and then as a patient, having applied what I learned, I said, well, it's a shame to waste that. So let's try to help as many people as possible, because the reference point for cancer is TV, movies, it's a plot device where you're going to die. The way people respond at work to cancer is they pull back. I don't want to ask too much of you. I want to change all of that, because the vast majority of people diagnosed with cancer, early stage cancers, which is well over 90% of cancers, they're going to live. They're going to live through it. They're going to live long, healthy lives. So let's not count them out, and let's not count ourselves out.
Wow. That's a story. That's a story. How do you, I guess the first question I have for you is, how does one find that balance between um, uh, uh, what I would consider an earth-shaking disease, something that really kind of rattles your bones when you get a diagnosis like you had, plus you have family history, you have a career, you have children. How does one balance that all out when something like that is happening?
So I want to encourage you and your listeners to think of balance as a verb and not a noun. You are balancing. You are always rebalancing based on what is the most pressing priority at the time. So that's really important, because you can't do everything at the exact same time, but you can do a lot of things in rapid succession, right?
Yeah.
So when you start thinking about that, you have this earth-shattering diagnosis. You have to breathe. You have to let all of the feelings wash over you. And then you're going to need some information. And it's going to take some time, often, to get the information you need. That's normal. Cancer is only urgent because you know about it, with a couple of exceptions, right? If you have a blood cancer, a hem-onc, those go very fast into treatment. But solid tumors, they want a lot more information because they want to precision target the treatment to your type of cancer. At the same time, you have a job, and things haven't stopped there. And you have a family, and things haven't stopped there. So one of the concepts I'd love your listeners to appreciate is there's never a bad time to invest in your relationships. You invest in them constantly. Do for others. Appreciate others, both at work and in your family. Build open communication. Show up for other people. Because the cancer curveball is unexpected. You don't usually feel sick. You don't have symptoms. It's usually a blood test or an image, and it's a surprise. So it is earth-shattering, both because it's scary. Cancer can kill you. And because it's wholly unexpected. In that moment, you're going to make what I call a withdrawal from some emotional bank accounts. So if you haven't been making regular deposits, which is in the realm of be a good person, show up for people, appreciate people, be a person of your word, both to your family and your colleagues. Say what you're going to do what you say. All of these things are the deposits in emotional bank accounts that when you say, whoa, I just got an unexpected diagnosis, or my husband did, or God forbid, my child or a parent, where you can then say to people, this is what's happening and this is what I need. So, A, continuously contribute to other people, and B, be clear about what's going on. So I was very clear. Because I was supposed to have surgery the next day, Johnny, I had maybe a few hundred people who knew I was going to have surgery because this was a big surgery and I was going to take time off from my work, and my kids knew and my parents knew, you're not going to hide a 14-hour surgery. And I don't think you should hide any surgeries, but you're certainly not going to hide that one. And I needed to tell them it wasn't happening. So I wrote this email, basically said, the universe flipped me the bird. I just found out that I've been diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer. It's early. It wasn't there 6 months ago at my last scan. We're not having surgery tomorrow. I need to find an oncologist. That's my top priority. I will be continuing to work, so I'm not going to take the time off, but I may need some flexibility. I don't need links from Google. I know this disease, but I do need referrals to an oncologist. I also don't need connections right now to other people who have a cancer journey because I have a family of people with them. And so I'm pretty covered on the support network. And if you're looking for a way to help me, I don't know yet, but I so appreciate it. And just sending prayers and good wishes and funny jokes and distractions, that would be such a gift. And that was my note. From that, I did get to the oncologist, the right oncologist, which was awesome. And I must have gotten 50 notes back saying, thank you, I never know what to do. And you told me what to do. And now I can do what you told me. I also told them that I would write on CaringBridge and I would invite them and I would keep them up to date. But please don't ask my husband, children, best friend, sister for updates. You mean well, and I so appreciate it, but it is a complete drag to tell people the same thing, same bad things, over and over and over. So I'm going to write it once, and you all can read it if you want, no obligation. That's what became the book, Crushing the Cancer Curveball, was people were responding to my writing. And so we turned it. It's much harder to turn a CaringBridge into a book than I thought, but that's what I did.
Right.
But that clarity, Johnny, you have to let yourself feel, let yourself catch your breath. You have to focus on what's most important, finding oncologists, communicating with people so that they didn't inadvertently do something that would trigger us, and, starting to reorganize my life to accommodate this new intruder.
Right. Yeah, I've had cancer twice myself, and the second time I had head and neck cancer the second time, and
Damn, Johnny.
it was quite a ride, let me tell you. And I was in the middle of my career at the time, and I worked through all my chemo and all my radiation. I went to work every day, and even though I had to drive 2 hours to do my radiation, I worked it out with my oncologist so that I could do the late afternoon one day and the early morning the next, and stay overnight, and get back in the office about 10 o'clock in the morning and work. And I had to do chemo every Friday, and I was really amazed with chemo because I think they put steroids in the chemo, at least the
They
chemo
do.
I was
They do.
doing. And I would come out of there Friday, and I'd get home Friday night, and I'd say to my wife, I'd say, I feel great. Let's go out to dinner. And then about and then about Saturday afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
it was I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to get out of bed.
Right.
And it was a cycle. And then the following Monday, I'd get up, I go back into the office, I go to work. I don't think I worked a lot, but I was there. And 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 went through this over and over again for I don't know 4 to 6 weeks. I just don't remember the amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing that really struck me was I had built up a good relationship with my radiation oncologist and from a prior cancer that I had. And I went to him when I was diagnosed with head and neck, and I wanted his opinion as a second opinion. He had been with both Mayos in Rochester and Phoenix, and he knew what he was doing. And so he goes through all my stuff and does an exam and looks at all my records, and I said to him, I said, what's your prognosis with this? And he looked at me right square in the eye and he says, John, I'm going to cure you.
Amen.
And you know what? That had a big effect on me.
Mm-hmm.
I walked out of there with like, okay, well, let's just go through the process and get this over with. And that's exactly what I did. And that was 11, 12 years ago.
I
So I
love
feel,
that.
I feel really good, but it was, but people were kind of dance around you. They kind of like, "Oh, well, this guy's sick. And so, we better stay away from him or something." And I want to engage the world and, except on Monday afternoons. But, I, I guess the big question is, with your experience with cancer, what do you see as the myths?
Oh,
What have you
sure.
discovered, and how do you reframe the narrative? Because that's one of the things I ran into was the narrative, and the outside, what I call the outside narrative is, uh, well, this guy has cancer, so we got to stay away from him, or he's gonna die in the middle of whatever he's doing.
Right.
There's all kinds of stuff going on. So how do you reframe it? What do you do for people? What's
Absolutely.
your approach?
So first off, let me say I am so glad to hear that you are cancer free for 11 years. And I
Thank
love
you.
that your oncologist said, I'm going to cure you. So myth one is that you're going to die from cancer.
Right.
There are cancers that kill people. And there are many, 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 there are over 20 million cancer survivors in the United States. Okay. So there's a whole lot more of us that live through it than die from. So myth number one is not you're going to die. It's going to be disruptive. So myth number two is you're going to be sick all the time. No, you're not. I
Right.
mean, some people are, and that's awful, but most of us aren't. And what I tell CEOs when I talk to them about this is don't make choices for the cancer patient. Ask them. We are pretty good at letting people know what we can and cannot do. And the conversation you had with your radiation oncologist, I want everyone to hear what was really important there. You conveyed to him, I want to work and you are 2 hours away. Can we work the schedule so that I can have my life and obviously my treatment? And his answer was, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
just have to ask, right? So
Right.
that's my point to employers. Like, don't assume I have cancer, I'm going to be gone for 6 months. In my case, I had chemo once a week. I didn't work that day. I felt fine, the next day. So I did work Thursday, Friday. Mine was on Wednesday. When I
Right.
wanted to travel to see my son's first collegiate baseball game, I'm in California. He was going to be playing in Florida. I asked my oncologist, is this a risk? She said, nope, just be back by Wednesday. And so I did. When I wanted to travel after chemo, after surgery, but I was still getting immunotherapy every 3 weeks, and I wanted to be on other parts of the country, I said, can I get an infusion in Texas, in New York, somewhere else that I'm going to be? And she said, well, with your immunotherapy, there's a 6-week option. Why don't we just give you a 6-week dose and we'll give you your regular dose when you get back? So ask. If
Yeah.
you're the patient, ask for what you need. If you're the employer, ask the patient what they can do. Don't make choices for us.
Right. That another thing I notice about doctors is when it comes to communication, I had a situation when I started my head and neck uh, chemo. They were giving me a new product on the market, and it caused me to have, I don't know if it was an allergic reaction, but the inside of my mouth completely turned into blisters.
Sores. Mm-hmm.
And I had it because they were doing so much radiation uh, around my teeth and under my jaw and all that. I had to be my oncologist told me to go to my dentist and get fitted with a thing to protect my teeth at night or something like that. And so on my on my on my way to radiation one day, and my mouth's all broken out, and I'm thinking I'm not going to even get this done today. But I stopped in to see my dentist to get fitted for this device that they wanted, this appliance they wanted me to wear. And he looked at my mouth and he says, "John," he said, "we're not going to do anything with you today." And he said, the one way to calm down all that those blisters in your mouth is why don't you stop at the pharmacy and get some milk of magnesia
Hmm.
and swish it around your mouth. He said that'll calm it down a little bit. And I told him, I said, well, thanks. And once I get this cleared up, I'll be back we'll get fitted for this appliance. And then I went on down the road down to my oncologist, and I'm in his office, and I'm thinking, okay, I better tell him about my mouth, and maybe he won't do this today because I'm really hurting. And he comes in and he looks at my mouth. He says, "No, we're gonna do your radiation today." I said, "Well, interesting enough, I was just at my dentist and he told me I should rinse my mouth with milk of magnesia." And he looked at me and he says, "You didn't do that, did you?" And I said, "Well, no, I didn't. I bought the milk of magnesia, but I came here first." And he said, "Good thing, John, because magnesium and radiation, your mouth, it would be like putting a spoon in a microwave."
Ooh,
Was what he told me. And so how doctors communicate and what they do between each other, that's one of the things that I've noticed is there's these gaps, and you
totally.
really got to bring your doctors together,
Well,
you know.
realize, Johnny, you're the only constant. Your
Right,
doctors aren't specialists. It's too hard, right?
right,
Your dentist didn't know. He would
right,
never have told you to do that if he knew. He just
right.
knew people with mouth sores, magnesium helps, not
Yeah,
people going through radiation with mouth sores. So
right.
you, you as the patient, you are the quarterback. You must step into your power and your voice. And it's okay to say, I really wish this wasn't happening. In
Yeah,
fact, you wouldn't be normal if you didn't occasionally have a pity party and say, like, why do I have to do this? Why is my mouth like, there are things to help with mouth sores, and they'll
yeah,
tell you to gargle with, I think it's baking soda, and they have things that aren't magnesium. But sometimes that happens.
yeah,
And
yeah,
sometimes you lose your hair, and sometimes you get a little burned, and sometimes you're going to have scars. I've actually, Johnny, when I speak to survivors, when I speak in synagogues, when I speak to corporate audiences, I bring a little blue bowl because I made it. It is the Japanese art of kintsugi. And the Japanese art of kintsugi is finding beauty in brokenness. So
yeah.
you effectively break the bowl, reconstruct it with gold flecked epoxy. So now you
Oh,
have a bowl that has gold veins, and it does not look like the bowl before, but it is still beautiful and it is strong. And that is the metaphor I like to use for these curveballs we face in life. The bowl's going to break. You can throw out the pieces, you can make a bowl out of the pieces with gold veins, or you can make something else out of the pieces, but the bowl's going to break.
yeah. Well, let's shift gears a little bit
Hmm.
and talk about the corporate world because we've been talking about balancing
Yeah.
health, right, um, with with our corporate life. And what do you think is the most overlooked skills leaders need to thrive when they're working with people that maybe have some type of situation that pops up in their life? And the world is really fast changing and it's hyper competitive, so things have changed from 20 years ago. What do you see as how can somebody work through that these days?
Yeah. And by the way, Johnny, so that would be any leader that has people, because things are always popping up with people. That's life. Like
Right,
myth number one is things aren't going to pop up. Of course, things are going to pop up.
right.
If not them, their kid, their spouse, their friend, their coworker, things pop up. Number one, leaders must be clear of focus. What is important and what is not? When you choose everything, I remember a sales leader saying to me, "We tried OKRs, objectives and key results. They didn't work for us." I said, "Well, that's interesting because I've been using them for 25 years. What didn't work?" He goes, "Well, we had 10 of them and, nobody paid attention to them." I said, "Well, because you didn't do them." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "The purpose of OKRs, of strategy on a page, of V2 uh, V2 Mom from Salesforce is to actually choose what are the three most important things.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 10, nobody knows. And conflict comes up when people are pursuing different goals, believing they're what's most important. So, one, be very clear on what's most important and what is less important. And like I said about balance being a verb, alignment is a verb. Your job is to continuously align. And that means you're going to be getting new information. You're going to get new information from the market. You're going to get new information from your own team. You're going to get new information that may cause you to reprioritize the focus. That's okay if you communicate it and you say, now, because of these things, this is what's important, and these things are lower priority. So if we focus, communicate with clarity in the way people are best suited to hear it, and that means becoming a master communicator, a detector of other people's communication needs. And then the third in the mix is creating an environment with what's now called psychological safety. But if you think about it, the only things we learn from are our mistakes, our challenges. That's what we learn from. When a baby learns to walk, they fall down. When a child learns to talk, they say the wrong thing. And so do we as adults. We need to create an environment where people are okay trying something new and making a mistake, as long as it's in service of the focused goal and they learn from the mistake. And ideally, they share what they learned with everybody else so everyone doesn't make the same mistake.
That's a really critical, important point. I kind of get a sense that in our world today, everybody's trying to live a perfect life. And
Mm.
even in the workplace, everybody wants to do the perfect job, wants to perform perfectly. So when challenges come up, they what I've seen is they try to hide things. They try to dance around things. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm hearing from you is no, take it head on. Yeah, I dropped the ball, and let's figure out why you dropped the ball and how I dropped the ball, and let's try to move on. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Absolutely. I mean, a cover up wastes the opportunity to learn
Right.
and wastes tremendous energy. I make mistakes all the time. There is no perfect life. How boring. Like, just step back for a second. How boring would a life be where nothing ever happens?
Right.
Like, ick. You know, when I got diagnosed with cancer, something I do not wish on anybody. It turned into one of the happiest years of my life because I allowed people to express their care for me, to
Right.
provide support to me. I never felt so loved. And by the way, I hate pity. I'm very competent, I'm very independent. But there just were things that, like, okay, like I can't drive home from chemotherapy because they give me Benadryl and I'm not safe to drive. Therefore, I'm going to need help. And I didn't want it to always be my husband. It turned out to never be my husband because so many people said, I would love to pick you up and drive you home. And I'd love
I,
to drive you there. How
I had
beautiful.
it. I had exactly the same thing.
Right. How
I had
boring would our lives be, Johnny, if we didn't have the opportunity to show people we care and to be cared for?
I, I was amazed. Of course, I had to drive 2 hours,
That's big.
and I didn't do very well when I had to go into the radiation machine and they strapped my head to the bed.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of freaky for me. So they had to give me something to calm me down every time. And so what I found was when I first started going by myself, I started to fall asleep on the way home from the drugs. And
No
so
good.
yeah, my wife said, "Well, you're not driving by yourself anymore." And I said, "Well, you can't take all the." She says, "I know, but let's see what we can do." And sure enough, I had people popping up all over the place that were driving me for this 2 hour thing, and I was amazed. I really was amazed, and I really developed in some really close relationships as a
Mm-hmm.
result of that 2 hour ride down and back.
Of course. Of course you did. And it's beautiful. And that's life. Life, we are a tribal pack animal. We need each other. And we
Right?
need each other at work as well. May the crises be nowhere near. The worst thing that happens is a business goes under, and that's sad.
Yeah.
But, even at work, saying something's happening that I don't understand or something's not going well and I need help is an invitation to build a stronger relationship, to build stronger bonds, and to two heads are better than one.
Right.
So, as leaders, we have to create an environment that facilitates and foments that, not the environment of, oh, you're an F up, you're incompetent, you failed, I didn't. Like, it's tricky because we do want people to be as excellent as possible, right?
Right.
We want people to do great work. But
Yes.
along the way, they're going to make mistakes, and that's what's going to lead to the great work. Right? What
Right.
is it? 10,000 efforts to make a light bulb, or 1,000 efforts by
Yeah.
Thomas Edison? Like, it's
Right.
some massive number of failures to get to a light bulb.
Yeah, that's a good example of tenacity. Um, I've heard you use the term urgency triggers. You want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, urgency triggers are about what motivates a person to act, right? So, cancer is an urgency trigger, right? You get the diagnosis, you're going to have to do something about it.
Right.
In business, people get distracted by things, by the to do list, by the number of requests. And when they think about their buyers, their customers, they get people who will tell them, oh, I really like your product. Oh, okay, great. Or here's what I like about your product. Oh, I'd love to hear that. But if they're not buying it, or if you can't understand what was happening in their world when the ones bought it, and the ones who didn't, you're actually missing the key lever to make your business grow, right? In
Right.
B2B tech, for example, if you had a 25 to 30% win rate, you're going to the bank, you're excited. There is so much to learn about 3 companies, 3 buyers, all qualified. They have a problem, you're a good fit, you have a champion, they have budget. So you've, quote, checked all the boxes. One buys, two don't. Now, we consider that normal, and it is. But if you can, why did the one buy now? And I will tell you, Johnny, I ask this question of CEOs, of CROs, of CMOs all the time, and they inevitably start telling me what's great about their product, and I'm sure it is. But I look at them and say, but this wasn't about your product. What was happening in their environment that made buying your product, which is hard to do, it is hard to buy things. What made that so important it was worth the pain? And it probably has nothing to do with you. And I actually go out with people and we find out. It could be there's a new boss and the new boss wants to do things differently. It could be you're the new boss and you want to shake things up, or this problem has really bothered you. But there's definitely like an organizational change. The board or the CEO have determined this is the highest priority, and how we've been going about it isn't fast enough or isn't working. I want you to try something new. Or a competitor has done something so well, so fast, you're now behind, and you need to change things to catch up and beat them. None of which have to do with the product elements. They have to do with the circumstances. When you understand what's driving the urgency, that actually becomes the most important qualification point. Because the only thing we can't make more of, Johnny, is time.
Right.
So if I know that company 1 actually has an urgency trigger and company 2 and 3 are very well intentioned, but there's no urgency, I should put twice the amount of effort into company 1, because that's the one that's going to close.
Got it. Okay, so that's urgency triggers. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. In fact, I had somebody on maybe 3-4 months ago that she does focus groups for companies, but you know what she does? She, how do I explain this? She goes in and gets an understanding of why people really bought a product, not based on what the company thinks and she says about 9 out of 10 times what the company perceives as why people buy their products isn't why people are buying their products.
Right.
It's pretty interesting, and you're kind of, with urgency triggers, you're kind of describing the same thing, that people who really dig into their business and try to understand their customer, the more they understand their customer and the more they respond to that, the better off they're going to be.
Right. And it's interesting. This is where being able to emotionally regulate, which is important. You asked me about balance back in the beginning.
Yeah.
And your ability to understand and manage your own emotions is important, obviously, if you're dealing with a cancer situation. But anything where there's pressure and the desire to achieve or to do well or whatever to support, when you have that emotional regulation, you can say, okay, I know I really want to win this deal because I want to get to my number, I want to help the company, whatever it is. And that interferes with your ability to hear, because you're actually creating stress. And stress puts you into a high adrenaline, fight, flight, or freeze stance, where the most active part of your brain is your brainstem, which is also the lizard part of your brain. It's not the human, powerful, brilliant part of your brain.
Right.
So you have to learn to recognize, whoa, I'm getting stressed because of my own internal dialogue about what this means. I need to cool my jets so that I can be empathetic and curious. Because if I listen well, I'm going to learn something. Whether or not that something's going to help me win or not, I don't know, but it'll be useful.
We're going to run out of time in a few minutes, and I want to cover something that's really important, and that's your book, Crushing the Cancer Curveball. One of the things that I found interesting is that at the end of every chapter, you have this little box that says lessons learned. And you want to talk about that for a minute?
Sure. So, like I just mentioned, we don't get to make more time. And if you're dealing with cancer, whether it's you or someone you love, and your family, and your work, and, you might not have the time to want to read the stories in each of the little chapters. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you need the information. So, what I did is synthesized it for you. So, if all you want to do is you're in the stage of diagnosis, you go to the section on diagnosis. Each chapter has a theme. And if you don't want to read the story, go to the back page and there's lessons learned. If you don't want to do that, go to the end of the section and there's a summary of the lessons learned from the entire section. I could tell you, read the book backwards. You can read the conclusion. That has everything you need to know, soup to nuts. And then say, okay, where am I? Am I in the prevention stage? Am I in diagnosis? Am I in treatment? Am I in surgery? Or am I in recovery? Returning to my life. Read the book where you want. Tear the book into pieces if you need to, right? Like, this is to help you. And the journey's non-linear, so you don't have to read the book cover to cover. My feelings won't be hurt. It's a good read. I'm kind of funny. So it's, if you have the time or if you just want to, dive in and, there's one about I'm walking around trying to find my husband and my daughter at this lacrosse tournament that's at the polo fields in San Diego. And there's 40 lacrosse fields. And the Uber drops me off. And at the same time as I'm trying to find them in acres and acres and acres of I don't know what, I happen to look at Walgreens and there's all these prescriptions. And I don't know what they are. And I'm sitting there dragging my rollerboard at this lacrosse tournament, trying to figure out why I have all these medications and saying, oh my God, am I actually this sick? And, it's like, what do I do first? Do I deal with Walgreens? Do I deal with the fact that I have no idea where my family is? Do I just sit here and feel bad for a few minutes? And you have to make some choices.
Right.
But everyone feels those moments. And when you read the stories, you'll find things that say, oh, it's okay if I don't feel like I've got my shit together all the time. No one's got their shit together all the time.
That's true. You're speaking truth right there, Joelle. But the concept of breaking your book down like that is just fascinating to me, because somebody who's going to read your book, I would think, is already started on a crisis or is related to somebody that's in a medical crisis, wants answers. And what you've done is you've simplified it. So if they don't want to read those stories, they can get right to the point.
That's it.
And I think it's great. I mean, what a great idea. A lot of people could, a lot of self-help books could really use that concept.
Yeah, I think it's funny. We get enamored. We all like the sound of our own voice, and we get enamored of our stories. And I'm telling a good story. And stories will help you remember things. So stories are great. But if you're about to head into your oncologist appointment and you want to know what are the key questions I'm not thinking of,
right?
Skip the story. Go to the lessons learned and read them, right? And maybe those are the questions you want, or maybe they'll prompt you to think of another question. I don't care. I'm here to help.
Right. Well, Joelle Kaufman, I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your story with us and sharing your book and your life and the challenges that you've had, the successes that you've had. And again, thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Well, I've really enjoyed Minutes with Mango, and every day is a blessing. Some days are happy ones, some days are hard ones. That's life, but I feel very lucky to get each one of them.
All right. Well, you take care, okay?
You too.
All right. You have been listening to Minutes with Mango, Life in Motion. Subscribe to hear a new and unique guest each week as they comment on their life's journey and share experiences with lifestyle, culture, and career. You can always find us at minuteswithmango.com.